Hello everyone, and welcome to our 3D product animation class. Whether you are joining us for the first time or you are a returning viewer, I am thrilled to have you here. Today we are going to be looking at something very interesting titled Parametric Modeling and Modeling with Deformers in Cinema 4D.
So what is modeling? 3D modeling is the process of creating three-dimensional representations of objects or scenes using specialized software, which in this case is Cinema 4D. So 3D models could be characters, objects, environment, and shapes. So these are examples of 3D models that are characters. They could be hyper-realistic, they could be stylized. You have environment too. These are all 3D models. You have objects. It could be real-life objects like your phone. It could be your fan. It could be your AC. It could be your laptop that you're even using now. So basically, 3D modeling is trying to create a 3D portrayal of something, whether something that exists or something from your imagination. There are different types of modeling. You have parametric modeling, you have spline modeling, you have polygonal modeling, you have digital sculpting. And in fact, outside that, you have new technologies that allow you to scan 3D models. So technology is evolving. Sometimes you don't even have to model now. You can actually model by just taking your iPhone camera or maybe your Android camera around the object and taking pictures of it. Then your computer merges all the angles to form the whole object. You also have what I would call maybe AI modeling. I haven't seen very much of that out there, but I can tell you that that's something that is going to be coming out soon, where you can probably start, maybe using a prompt to model. Yes, we are going to be looking at parametric modeling, spline modeling, and polygonal modeling. But for today's class, we are going to be looking at just parametric modeling. Now, parametric modeling is a basic modeling technique which involves defining a 3D model by adjusting its parameters. These parameters include size, shape, segments, and other properties. It allows for easy modification of 3D models. So parametric modeling is like a basic sort of modeling. In fact, it's the simplest type of modeling, and you are just adjusting the size, the shape, the segment. In fact, let's get into the practical aspect, because I think you understand what I'm saying when we get in here. So when you talk about parameters, you are talking about the defining characteristics of a shape, which could be like size, scale, the properties of a shape. So let's bring in a cube, for instance. Now this is your object, your primitive object. When you talk about parametric modeling, you have your object properties like size on the x-axis, on the y-axis, on the z-axis. You have your segment, you have separate faces, you have your fillet, and all of this. Parametric modeling basically involves adjusting all of these figures to get your desired result. Now let's start with size. Size is like how large or how small your object is, and you can adjust the size on the different axes. You can adjust the size on the x-axis, which is the horizontal axis. So we are already doing some parametric modeling. I'm adjusting the parameters, and as you can see, I'm actually modeling already. You can adjust the size on the y-axis. You can adjust the size on the z-axis. Now let's look at the next thing. After size, you have your segment. Now segments are basically the number of divisions along certain axes or directions of an object. Now when I say segment, I will need to bring out what we call the Gouraud shading lines. That's for you to understand better. So I gave a very brief description of the different types of display you have, and one of them that you would subsequently work with a lot is Gouraud shading lines. These things bring out the lines of your mesh. They bring out the wireframe. It brings out the wireframe of your mesh. So let's say if I increase the segment in the x-axis, you can see these are the things that allow me to modify my object. So if I eventually make this object editable, it is these lines, these segments that I'm creating that would allow me to be able to edit my 3D model. So you can increase the segment on the Z axis. Another way you can see these lines is when you actually make your object editable and you select any of your point, edge or polygon mode. You see that it highlights these segments so that you can select them and of course model with them. But for today's class, we are not looking at any of that. What we are looking at today is parametric modeling, which does not involve making an object editable. So we have looked at the segments now, and I'm going to put this on. We have what we call separate faces, and separate faces comes in handy when you actually make your object editable. So if I click on separate faces now, each of those faces, this collection of faces will be separate. So if I make this editable by clicking on this, you can see it divides my cube into different faces. So I can click on this, for instance, now come to my move tool and see the faces are separate. But I don't need to separate my faces. It's actually cool this way. Then another important thing you also get to see in your attribute here is your fillet. Now what fillet does is that, now before I click the fillet, I want you to notice the edge of this cube. You see how sharp it is? But once I click on fillet, I think I can put off the Gorad shading for you to see this well. So this is with fillets and this is without fillets. So fillets are basically rounded edges or corners applied to objects which smooth out sharp angles or transitions between surfaces. So they basically make your object look more realistic. You can see how this is sharp. In real life, you hardly see an object with this type of sharp edge, because if objects are this sharp, there is a tendency for them to actually injure people. And basically, I even think by the fact of nature, you wouldn't see objects this sharp. So fillet is just an attempt to replicate that roundness you get in most objects you see in real life. If you take a look at your table now, there is a very high tendency that the fillet might be small, but your table has some level of fillets attached to it. So the more you model, the more you are going to be working with your fillet. So most times in other 3D software, it is called bevel edges and all of that. Yes, in Cinema 4D you see have the bevel option, but at this primitive stage, at the parametric stage of your model, it is referred to as fillets. So you have your fillet radius, which is you use to increase the size of your fillet. You can see as I take this up and see it becomes smoother. You have your fillet subdivision. If I take it to 0, you can see there is no longer. Let me bring out the shading lines now, just one. If I increase it, it makes it become smoother. So these are basically the parametric objects or the parametric attributes you use to edit your shape. These are the basic ones you use, and for each shape you bring into your scene, they have similar parametric attributes, they have similar object properties, but many times they have some extra some little segments, some extra segments that just differentiate between the objects. So let me quickly touch a little bit on something before I go into another object to give you more insight into parametric modeling. So when you click on an object, you see you have 4 options. You have basic, coordinate and func. So basic here, you have first of all the name of your object. So this is a cube. You can either change the name of your object up here, or you can change it in this place. So I'm going to call this lovely cube. You can see the name gets changed up. Another one is viewport visibility. Now I was saying it earlier on that you could use these 2 dots to hide your object in your scene, but this is another way you can go about it too. So you see what you call viewport visibility. This just helps you to hide, to make an object visible or invisible in the scene. By default it is on, it is visible, but if I click on off, you can see that I can't see it anymore, and you can notice that this tiny circle here turns red. So whenever you see red, this red sign here, it means an object is invisible. So this is viewport visibility, right? Now you see beneath that you have something called renderer visibility. And what this implies is that this object, if we press off, is going to be visible in your viewport. But if you try to render, let's do a quick render now. So you can see this is our render view. And you can see we have this cube showing. But let's go to our settings again, our basic property settings. That let's click on off. And you can see that it highlights red, it shows red, showing that invisible. So whenever you see red in this space, it means something is invisible. And whenever you see green, it means it is visible. Just put it in your mind that red means stop, green means go. So let's look at this again and see. Do you see anything? No, you don't see anything anymore because I press off in the render visibility. So you might choose to work with your visibility either in this place here. So you can just press red here, double click. You can choose to work with it here, or you can choose to work with it here. This same principle applies to any object, any type of object you are working with in Cinema 4D. I also mentioned solo to you during our last class. I said when you have many objects in your scene and you just want one particular object to show in the scene, you can come and click on this object here that looks like an eye, viewport solo, an eye icon. So once I click on this, you can see that this is the only thing that shows in our scene. So let's say I have a cylinder, for instance. I put it out here and all of that, and then I click on this cylinder now for it again. I click on the cylinder and I click on viewport solo. Only the cylinder shows. I can put off the solo so all my objects in the scene can show again. And I can also put off I don't need the sky. Let's put off the sky and let's put this back to the normal garage shading. Okay, so I've explained the most important features in this basic here. You have something called your X-ray. Your X-ray, you use it when modeling. Just like what an X-ray does, it allows you to see through your object. It gives your object some level of transparency. So we can put this off now. And let's go to coordinate. We already spoke about coordinate in our last class, and coordinate is used to adjust your position, rotation, and scale of your object. So if you want to move this cube horizontally, you move in this direction. If you want to move it upwards, you move in this direction. If you want to move it backwards, you move in these directions. So you have your rotate. I already explained what H, P, and B means in Cinema 4D. But these are basically for rotation. You have your scale, which you use to scale up your object. So basic coordinates, we have already explained what your object does, and you also have your func. You might not be using your func very much at this stage, but basically what your func does is that it simulates the appearance of smoothness of a surface. So it uses light to make your surface and your fillet look more smoother. So if I take my func angle down, for instance, you notice that I am having some sharp lines, right? But if I take it back up again, you can see the way it's smoothing my stuff. So with func, I don't have to put so many I don't have to use so many segments, so many lines to make my object smooth, because it's performing that mathematics for me already. Yes, so we are still looking at parametric modeling, and we have looked at how we could work with a cube with parametric modeling. So we have other objects now, our primitive shapes, and let's look at a cylinder too. So you can see we have a cylinder now, and when you go to objects, this is what you get. You can see this is looking a little bit jagged at the edge. It's looking a little bit sharp. So by increasing the rotation segment, we can make this object smoother by, let's put on the garage shading lines, and you can see it's because we have few lines holding these edges. That's why we have it jagged like this. But if we have more lines in between, we can get a smoother cylinder. So let's increase the rotation segment, and you can see we have this. So basically this still falls under parametric modeling because we are editing the properties of the object, like the size, the segment, the scale, the rotate. For cylinder, we don't have size exactly now, but we have radius, which is it's basically to increase the size, not in the height dimension, but to increase the size of, you know, your cylinder. You have your height. So all of these still fall under parametric modeling. Our orientation is in the plus y axis, and that's why you can see that what the effect we are doing is going upwards. When we put it to minus x, you can see it changes. So all of these are still modeling. Put it to z, and you can see the orientation changes towards the z axis. So you can maybe increase the height and get some results. So you have things like caps here now. For instance, let's look at caps. Let's change this back to the y-axis, and caps, increase the segments more, and, you know, take the radius up more. So you can get this sort of cap effect by just boosting your radius and pushing the segment of your cap up too. So you have slice. If you want to slice your cylinder, you can see, let's say, I will teach you something very interesting about Cinema 4D, but I'll still talk about it later on. You see, the thing about Cinema 4D is that everything, and I think that's what makes Cinema 4D an outstanding software, is that everything in Cinema 4D is animatable. You can apply animation to almost everything. For instance, look at this now. These are 0, right? I can click on this 0. Okay, let's put this at 360 back. Let's say I want to do an animation of this guy working. Maybe I'm doing a walk and I want to describe a pie chart, right? So let's put this back at 360. So I can create an animation by clicking on this guy here to start the animation and making sure my keyframe is at the beginning. I can go to 90, take it down to 0, and set another key. And let's see what happens when we take it back. When we play, you can see we have an animation going on now. So whenever you see this sort of key here, Cinema 4D is telling you that that particular attribute can be animated. We are going to be looking at deformers in Cinema 4D. Deformers are one of the interesting tools in Cinema 4D. And what they allow you to do is that they allow you to modify the shape or behavior of an object. Let's assume this is an art studio and you have been called to create some really nice types of art, maybe some really nice sculpts. So first of all, this is going to be the stand of the object we are going to be making with our deformers. So where is your deformers? You have your deformers here. Remember I told you that in Cinema 4D, whenever you see a tiny triangle here, it means that that particular icon or tool is pregnant with some other tools. So you see you have a lot of deformers. Now I'm going to be teaching you the most common ones, which is the bend deformer, bulge deformer, shear deformer, taper deformer, twist deformer. I might touch a few other ones if we have some time, but the ones you are going to be using the most, I believe, are these 5 here. Yeah, so how do you work with deformers? Let's start with the bend deformer. So I'm going to bring in another cube, this tiny cube. I'm going to scale this up a little bit, give it some height. So if I'm going to be applying deformers, I'm going to need to give this guy some segment, because an object is able to bend or able to deform based on the amount of segment it has. So if an object is stiff, maybe it has just one segment, it will be difficult for us to apply deformers on it. So one of the first things you want to do most of the times, in fact beyond deformers, is that when you want to actually carry out effect, or you want to model, you want to sculpt, you want to do anything, most of the time you have to increase the number of your segments. So I'm going to increase it to 20, 20, 20, which is okay. I can take up my fillets now. So I'm going to start with the bend deformer. So I'm going to teach you how to use all of this first, and then I will now teach you how you can combine them together. So let me put this off first. Okay, let's start with our bend deform tool. So now you see there are two ways to work with a deformer. You could bring the deformer in this way and then drag and drop it under, but that's not the best way to work. The best way for you to bring in a deformer and apply it to an object is to click on the object you want to apply the deformer to, first of all. Next thing you do is that you open the deformer, hold shift, and then click on it. And the reason why you do it this way is that your deformer automatically detects that, okay, you are trying to apply it to that particular object you clicked on first, and you see that it surrounds that object. So I'm going to do that step again. Click on the object first, open your deformer, press shift, and select the deformer you want to use. Now I've selected the bent deformer. And once I click on the deformer itself, you see that I have the attribute of deformer. You have strength here, which is used to determine the strength of that particular effect of that deformer. So you can see once I take the strength really up, you can see that it is bending. So basically your bend tool your bend deformer allows you to bend an object along a curved axis in a non-destructive manner. Another thing you have is the angle, which you use to determine the angle you want that tool to bend in. You can see, so as I switch the angle, you can see it keeps on going around and around like this. And like I said, you can hide the visibility of object that you don't want to see. You can come here like basic, and you can see you might not want this bounding box of the bent deformer to show, so you can actually click on view for visibility off. That doesn't mean the effect will not be there, just that the bounding box will not be there. So I can still come to my bent deformer and I can still take it down. You understand? So if you see that things like that will distract you, you always have the luxury to hide it so that it is not visible. Okay, so good. I'm going to put the bend deformer at 0 again. Now the very cool thing about your deformers is that you can apply more than one deformer to an object in Cinema 4D. So while I have applied bend, I can still go in and apply multiple deformers to my object. So let's click on cube again and let's apply another deformer. So and let's look at the bulge deformer now. Alright, so what your bulge deformer does is that your bulge deformer allows you to create bulging effect. It distorts the shape of an object by pushing it inside or outward. So you know the meaning of bulge, right? That is like inflating or deflating an object. So the strength is at 0, and I mentioned earlier now that your strength controls the amount, how much you want that particular deformer to affect your object. So if I take this up, you can see. And this already in itself looks like a cool shape that we can actually put. We are trying to create some cool art effect for our art room. So this looks like some really cool effect you can work with. So you can come back again here and you can still take it down. See, this is the curvature, which determines how curvy your bulge is. So let's take it up, all the way up. Yes. Now the thing about working with deformers and working at the primitive state of things is that your cube still has all the parameters it has. The parameters has not been destroyed. So you can actually go to your cube. If you look at your cube now and you feel that, oh, this edge is actually looking sharp, you can actually go to your cube and increase the fillets. Maybe you want it to bend a little bit more, and you can see while you have applied that bulge effect, you can still increase the fillet radius. Maybe you want to give it more bend. We have created some really cool shape. Let's put this cube downwards a little bit so it can touch the bottom of the table. Bulge effects. So let's look at another deformer. You can see the cool results I'm achieving with these deformers. Now we are still going to look at how we can apply all of them together. Let's look at share. I will say I don't use share very much, but I believe some people will find its use. So Ctrl C, let me just delete. I said the best way to apply a deformer is to click on the object you want to apply the deformer to, open the deformer options and click on Shift. The bounding box of that particular deformer wraps the object you want to apply it to. So now we can click on Strength. So what your share deformer does is that it allows you to skew or slant object or geometry in a specified axis. You can see. So you can increase the curvature if you want it to bend more. This is your skew for you. Let's put it back at 0. And let's look at another deformer rather. So I'm going to click on this cube again, and I'm going to click on taper. Shift. So what does your taper tool do? So your taper tool allows you to taper or converge the geometry of an object. So what it does is when you hear taper, it converges it. So let's increase the strength so you can understand what I'm talking about. You can see it converges it at the top here. So you can see how we are able to create really nice and cool shapes with these deformers, right? So you want it like this, you can get this result. So you can see we are getting some really nice effects. Now very quickly, I would like to speak about something that I've been omitting, and it's the fillets. You can see you have a fillet here too, right? Now I've spoken about fillets, that your fillet is what you use to get these smooth edges, and this is what you have here. But you also have fillet in your deformer effect, and what your fillet does is that it adds the level of smoothness or like this curvy transition to your deformers. So without fillets, you can see how that the transition, like the taper effect, is just straight up. It just gets applied straight. But if I add a fillet, you notice some sort of curvy transition. You can see it curves this way. Without fillet, it just goes up straight. But fillet applies some level of curvy, smoothens the transition between the end of the deformer and the beginning. So I think fillet sometimes is a good option to leave open. When I scale it up, you can see the effect here. Now let's look at the last one. I wish I could look at more. Let me see how perhaps I'll try to look at a few more before we call it a wrap. So let's look at twist. Oh, twist is one of my favorite. So I'm going to click on this first, and I'm going to come to the deformer, open it and press. Yes, twist. So basically the twist deformer, like the name implies, it allows you to twist or rotate geometry along a specific axis. So if I click on this twist for instance, and I come to twist, you can see what I'm able to get here. You see how we are able to achieve a very cool result with very little. So you can see that deformers are very interesting. And if you feel that this is distracting, like I said, come to your twist, and you can either put it off the visibility off here of the twist deformer. Yes, there is one deformer that we have not put the visibility off. Let's go to click on this thing twice, this tiny circle, to put it off, and then you can see we have a really nice shape with very little. And see, these are part of the reasons why Cinema 4D is very popular for motion graphics, because of tools like this, because you can achieve a lot with very little. But let's put our twist back at 0, and let's look at maybe 1 or 2 extra tools. But I want to look at squash and stretch. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to open this. I'm going to click on squash and stretch. So there is a lot of properties you can edit in your squash and stretch, but very quickly you can just come and click on your factor, and you can see it gets squashed. It works. Yes, you can play with it. By the time you edit all of these details, you get different results, of course. Just play around. Like the deformer is very interesting. When you want to stretch, you want to get that sort of stretchy feeling, that slimy feeling, you can achieve it with this. So its joints is close together. Let's say this is your chocolate bar, and then you want to draw it out to get. And then by the time you add all those your other effects like your twist, you can see you can even cut it. So maybe it has stretched, the chocolate has stretched to its limit, and then you can just cut it. So all of this still falls under motion graphics. So many times you never know when you are going to get to use it, but these like really cool things that you can create with Cinema 4D deformer shapes with your deformers. Now let's look at how we can combine these together to create our final work of art before we call this a wrap. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click on this guy now. Let's start with our bend. Okay. Let's bend this guy this way. Okay, good. Let's give it some budge effects. Or let's give it some twisting first. Okay. Maybe we should give it a little bit of bend again. Okay, and perhaps we can take it to the, since we are bending it now, let's take it to the center of our, so we have this. We can give it some twist some extra twist if you like. Yes, whenever you see, you can see it says 360 here, and you have the slider looking as if you have gotten to the limit. Always know that you can always come back to this slider and still click on it and drag to get your desired result. So I think this is fair. So you have twists. Let's look at tapered. Maybe we want to take it down a little bit at the top. Okay. Good. So yes, because I'm a very extra person, and my taste of art could be quite interesting, I'm just going to add one more fine art thing. This is basically a freestyle, like you can see, so it's not as if I have something I'm trying to create. So let's add a sphere. Okay. And then maybe scale it down a little bit. We have a really nice work of art, but I would like us to do one final thing to make this work look much more sweeter and much more interesting. I'm going to do one more final thing. So I'm going to be giving it a material, but this time around I won't be giving it an ordinary material. I'll be giving it a gradient material. So I'm going to come to my material, create a new material, right? I'm going to take this material and drop it here. Yes, so I'm going to drop this here, and then I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to come to texture. Under texture, I'm going to come to gradient, and under gradient, I'm going to click on this. Okay, load presets. You can see Cinema 4D has a lot of nice gradients. Let's look for one that has a lot of colors. So yes, of course you need to download it first before you can apply it. So aha, now all right, so maybe we can rotate this a bit. Aha. Yeah, so maybe we can give this background color, maybe a darker color, so that this guy gets to show more. We have created a really nice effect with very little. The funniest thing is that you can even create ice cream with this type of thing. Maybe you want to create ice cream and give it some color and do all of that. So yes, you can also add light if you intend to. Okay. Yeah, anyway, so I think we can call it a wrap. We can call it a wrap at this point. The whole goal was just to show you that yes, Modeling with deformers is not exactly a type of modeling technique. It's more of a tool. There are more of tools for modeling rather than being a technique for modeling. So there is so much you can do with your deformers. I would like you to actually experiment on your own and see what results you can get. So I think we can call this class a wrap. It's 9:06 already. So I'm going to give you an assignment, but this assignment we are not going to wait till next week Saturday before we submit the assignment. Okay, what I want you to give is that I want you to actually create your own art studio. So you just need to create the wall. You don't need something too complex. If you want to do something extraordinary, I love it when people try to be extraordinary, but like you can just, this is a simple plane and this is a simple cube that I've created with a box. So I want you to actually create your own style of art,